Good afternoon and welcome to this latest edition of the Entertainment Show, where we look at upcoming TV series and movies debuting here in Ireland and obviously being shown in the UK as well. And one of those TV series currently on our TV screens on channel Netflix here is Van Helsing. We're nearly towards the end of season 4 here in Ireland. Obviously, season 5 is currently in finished production in the United States, but it's been shown live there in terms of Netflix in the United States at the moment. But I'm delighted to be joined by one of the stars of the show this evening. He's been there from the beginning, from episode 1, in fact, the one and only Jonathan Scarfe, who plays the role of Axel in Van Helsing. And Jonathan, I suppose 4 seasons, I suppose 4 very long seasons, I suppose 5 and maybe a bit more in terms of sort of filming. You're on to season 5. Did you ever think there would be a season 5 when you started off shooting at what was a remake of the classic Van Helsing movie from the early noughties, and especially when you heard there was going to be a Van Helsing that was mainly female orientated?
Let me go back to the beginning of that question. Was I surprised that we had a season 5? Yeah, I was absolutely surprised. I was surprised each and every year when we were lucky enough to get picked up to do another season of that show. It's a rarity, really, to find yourself in a project that lasts that length of time in this business. So no, I was not expecting it to go for the season, and I was really happy that it did, and that the writers were given the opportunity to know that it was the 5th and final season, which allowed them to try and bring all of their various story threads to an actual conclusion, which again is something that's awfully rare in television to have that opportunity. So that was fantastic. In terms of there being a female lead and the reimagining of the whole Van Helsing mythos, that was something I was thrilled to be a part of as well.
And I suppose, Jonathan, in terms of Van Helsing and its development throughout the 4 seasons, and people look at the similarities maybe in terms of The Walking Dead, the whole issue of sort of vampires, but every time we've seen a sort of a different sort of domineering sort of villain in terms of Van Helsing. So we're getting to see certain sort of, it's not really the straight thing, we fight vampires day in, day out in terms of trying to fight for humanity. Survival. There's been sort of different variations from Alex Paunovic's character Julius at the start being bad, and this whole idea of turning bad guys into good, and we've seen the sister of witches, and we've seen all sorts of different sorts of traits of enemies. It's just not a case of just the common vampire, it turns dead and fight him off. Yeah, you've thought very much an awful lot into developing the characters of your enemies, just as well as developing the characters of the heroes of Van Helsing as well.
Yeah, I think that any number of these shows, whether it's the incarnation of it that would be zombies like The Walking Dead or vampires, where it's us. I mean, essentially what you're doing as a storyteller is you're putting human beings in this post-apocalyptic scenario where all of the rules have been taken away and they have to reestablish what they are. How are they going to function as a unit? How are they going to function as a society in the face of everything having fallen apart? I think that's what the appeal is for people when they watch these shows. It's not just running away from zombies. I used to joke that our show was essentially The Walking Dead, but our zombies were really fast. They didn't shamble along. But and as the show progresses, obviously you can explore different different aspects of what the vampires' culture is and what their politics are, what their hierarchies are, and the back and forth between that, because as you're mentioning, the show is sort of linchpins on the fact that Vanessa can turn vampires human, and vampires can obviously do the same in reverse. So there's lots of room for characters moving back and forth between those two worlds. I think that's what keeps it interesting anyway.
And I suppose your character Axel has sort of developed a love sort of hate sort of relationship throughout his time with the Van Helsing sisters. And so it just started off with Violet, and then he found himself being drawn to Violet's sister. Vanessa. Started off with Vanessa, and then he started being drawn to Vanessa's sort of sister Violet as well. And in terms of that sort of love sort of hate sort of relationship back, but he's always rode in behind the sort of Van Helsing, even when times it was for not maybe his own best interests were at heart.
Yeah, I think, that character is loyal to a fault. I mean, they established somewhere in season 3 that he had some tragedy in his past of having lost his sister and having felt the full responsibility of that and never wanting to have that experience again. So, yeah, I think that there's a push and pull in that relationship with Vanessa, like you say, love, hate. But at the end of the day, he's committed to the idea of sticking with her, protecting her, helping her, no matter the cost.
And I suppose in season 4, with the creation of 2 new characters really coming, the offspring of Vanessa Van Helsing, Jack, played by Nicole Muniz, and the young Violet as well, in terms of new sort of characters. Axel, your own character takes on a more mentoring sort of protector, sort of a father figure sort of role.
Yeah, I was so excited when they told me I was going to get to take on the mentoring, father figuring kind of a part, because I assumed that was going to mean I didn't have to do as much getting my butt kicked by vampires, on a week-to-week basis. But that didn't turn out to be the case. I think I have to be the mentor and still get chucked all over the place by the latest vampire that we've discovered.
And I suppose in terms of that, Jonathan, I suppose you've taken a very much of a creative lead in season 5 as well, sort of directing a few episodes. Is that something you were very excited about when the opportunity came about?
Yeah, it's something that I've wanted to do for a really long time, and the opportunity came up in season 2 to get to direct an episode, and it's something that many actors in the past have tried to do on a show that they're on, but not many get to carry on directing from that point. They usually get one, and it's sort of a present. But I was lucky enough to do that and then carry on in that role for the last 4 seasons, and wound up directing a dozen episodes of the show. Yeah, that's certainly one of my favorite parts of being involved in the project, period.
And I suppose, Jonathan, an intriguing sort of question now. When you signed on for Van Helsing, say in day 1, were you given sort of a long sort of term contract that you knew if there was successive seasons that your character would be there for the long run, or were you very much in the dark in terms of what was in store for your character in future in terms of scripts? Was there always that possibility that you could get written off at sort of any stage, or did you have that sort of sense of security with Van Helsing that you knew if it was going to be taken up for further seasons that you were going to be there for the duration of its course?
Oh no, that the axe has always been dangling over my head from the very beginning. I in fact, the very first year I was only supposed to do 7 or 8 episodes, whatever it was, and they had every intention of killing me at the 3/4 of the way through that first season, which they sort of do and did, but then managed to resurrect me so that I could carry on with the show. But each year it's been a 1-year contract each year. So yeah, somehow, by the grace of God, I managed to make it to the end.
Made it to the end. And I suppose, Jonathan, being involved in sort of a hit show that's been seen globally all over the world at this stage, and Van Helsing has really taken off. And I suppose while it was sort of growing and building in terms of season 1 and season 2, then it sort of made its main name here across the pond in Ireland and the UK and mainland sort of Europe. And have you sort of noticed that in terms of the interaction now with maybe international fans online or forums, or in terms of social media, that are you struck by how far the popularity of the show has spread?
Yeah, there was certainly a tipping point somewhere in there around season 3. It was most noticeable when we went to Comic-Con. I think it was our 3rd trip at the end of season 3, our 3rd trip down to Comic-Con, where we would go and sit on a panel in one of the conference halls down there. And the first 2 years, it was us and a handful of press and, a scattering of people. And suddenly in the 3rd year, the place was packed, and it was kind of extraordinary. Because we weren't expecting it. We were kind of expecting it to be the same as it had been the previous 2 years. And we got there, the place was packed. People were wanting autographs, all that sort of thing. And we were sort of pinching ourselves going, wow, when did this happen? How did this happen? We suddenly have an audience. This is great.
And I suppose that Jonathan, in terms of season 5, we see Trisha Helfer, who guest starred and made a sort of her appearance towards the end of sort of season 4 as the sort of the dark one, the sort of main nemesis. They were sort of teasing that was in the offing. She takes on a more sort of a lead role now in terms of season 5. So what was that sort of like when you heard that Trisha Helfer was coming on board for season 5 in Van Helsing? And I suppose new sort of blood, I suppose, creates sort of new life on set on cast as well.
Well, it was great. I mean, for one thing, it was great to know that Trisha was joining the show because she's, fantastic. But also, it was great to see that the storyline was coming to enough of a head that we were going to have our ultimate villain show up in the show, which was Dracula, and be able to unpack that whole story and what that actually meant and how that affected everything in the vampire hierarchy and in terms of and what that meant our heroes were going to have to accomplish in order to win the day. We finally got our big bad villain, which was great.
And I suppose, Jonathan, working on a sort of a tight-knit sort of cast and being involved in that Van Helsing project and that sort of family for such a long time, has it really given you the opportunity to delve out into other spheres of acting, or once you get the call that we were going to be renewed for another sort of season for Van Helsing, are you very much tied up then for maybe 8-9 months of the year in terms of trying to other projects sort of slip by in terms of that commitment? Because I imagine that seeing a few of the seasons and seeing a few of the episodes, I imagine it probably takes a long time to produce one episode, maybe 2 to 3 weeks. So when you're creating multiple seasons and multiple episodes, I imagine there's not much time to get involved in anything else.
There's not really. There's some windows of opportunity in there in between the seasons. But some actors take advantage of that. I'm one of the lazy actors that as soon as I know I have a job coming up, I don't really want to know about trying to pursue any others because I feel like that's good enough for me. But no, there hasn't been a ton of time or room for other stuff. So now there is, which is great.
And I suppose, Jonathan, being involved in a sort of sci-fi sort of universe, that sort of sci-fi scenario, people sort of get a sort of attached. Is there some genre of acting that sort of you like, or do you feel comfortable or versed in all forms of acting, that in terms of comedy, in terms of TV series, or do you think maybe sci-fi is the genre for you going forward in terms of, or is it just very much in terms of an actor, what sort of project, what sort of script that gets comes to your doorstep in terms of liking it and seeing what's available? Or do you feel that sci-fi is something that you want to really pursue into the future along the lines of more something similar to Van Helsing?
Oh, I don't know if I'd be pursuing something similar to Van Helsing. I mean, I love sci-fi and I love that genre. I love fantasy. I love period dramas. I love, it's a broad range of interest there. It really is dependent on the project and the role. What it is that tickles your fancy, where you're at in your life in terms of what you feel like doing. I'd really like to do a Viking saga. That's what I want to do. I want to have an axe just once in my career. I'd like to be running around with an axe and roaring.
On that note, Jonathan Scarfe, we'll turn it over to your character, Axel, for the final 30 seconds of this interview. And he might enlighten all our audience, our Irish audience, our listeners here, what's in store for them coming up when season 5 does land on here on our shows here in Ireland on channel Netflix. And over to you, the one and only Axel himself, and maybe he can enlighten our fans why they should tune in and watch season 5 of Van Helsing.
Well, after 5 years of wading through the muck with us, I hope you'd be keen to come back for the reward of getting to discover our take on Dracula, what that backstory really is, how it ties in with the Van Helsings. And we get to unpack that for you early on in season 5, which we're excited about.
On that note, Jonathan Scarfe, a pleasure talking to you this evening as we look back on the 4 successful seasons of Van Helsing, and obviously season 4 is still showing here in Ireland, and we're nearly to the completion here of season 4. Season 5 is being shown in the United States, and we look in joyful anticipation in terms of what that brings in store for us. But for the moment, Jonathan Scarfe, the one and only Axel from Van Helsing, a pleasure talking to you, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavors.
It was a pleasure talking to you, Jim. Thanks so much.
Cheers. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.